today comes from the 9th chapter of Matthew. Jesus is in the midst of his fantastic ministry that he has been doing in Galilee and around Jerusalem. Then Jesus went to all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James the son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out the demons." The gospel of our Lord. So what does God have for us from the Gospel of Matthew today? What does it have to say to our situation in this world, in this time, and in this place? Well, first we need to know what's going on with Jesus and his followers. Jesus, in the preceding chapters and verses, he's healed 2 demoniacs who were living in the tombs. He's healed a paralyzed man. He called Matthew, the tax collector, to be one of his apostles. He did some teaching. He restored a girl to life. He healed a woman who had been hemorrhaging for 12 years. He healed 2 blind men. He healed one who was mute. Pretty impressive stuff for an itinerant preacher from Nazareth. And now, as we read today, Jesus is sending his 12 apostles to do the same as he has done. I'm told that when we read the Gospel of Matthew, we should read it through the lens of the beginning of the story and the end of the story. And always throughout the Gospel of Matthew, we should be remembering that when Jesus talks to the disciples, to his followers, he is also talking to us. Towards the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, we find the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are what sets the scene for everything that follows in the Gospel of Matthew. The Beatitudes, you know them. Blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. That is the beginning, that's the beginning lens that we need to keep in mind whenever we read the Gospel of Matthew. And at the same time, we need to keep in mind the ending of the Gospel of Matthew. We've talked about it over the last few weeks a couple of times. The very last words that Jesus said to his disciples as he was about to ascend into heaven after his resurrection. He said to them, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to do all things that I have commanded you to do. And remember, I am with you even to the end of the age." These are the things to keep in mind as we read and study and wonder about today's gospel lesson. Our lesson looks back at the Beatitudes and it looks forward to the Great Commission. Jesus sends his apostles out. He sends them out to cure diseases, raise the dead, heal the lepers, proclaim the good news. But who is he sending them to? He's sending them to the same people that he is talking about in the Beatitudes. He's sending them to the nation of Israel. He's sending them to those whom he cares about the most. He's sending them, that's a wrong statement there. He cares about everybody the most. But all through Jesus' ministry, he is always about caring for those who are most in need at that time and in that place. And when Jesus sends out his apostles, those 12 people that are mentioned in the lesson, when he sends them out, he is sending them to the lost sheep of Israel, a specific group of people. They need to hear the good word that the kingdom of heaven has come near, and they need to be healed. Now that we have looked back in the story towards the Beatitudes and who it is that Jesus is concerned with at this particular place in time, we can turn and look in the other direction for our story. We can look towards the end, to go therefore now, going to all nations, baptizing them and teaching them, and remembering that God is with us even to the end. In today's story, Jesus is giving the apostles instructions, and he's giving them power. He's giving them the ability to go out and proclaim the good news, to cure the sick, to raise the dead. Can you imagine? To cleanse the lepers and to cast out demons. In the Gospel of John, we hear Jesus tell his followers, "The one who believes in me will also do the work that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father." So Jesus calls his apostles to do these things that seem impossible, and yet later in the story, he tells them that they are going to do even greater things. And remember that when he talked to them, he was talking to us. So the mission that Jesus gives in today's lesson evolves right in front of us as we read through the rest of the gospel, where we hear not just to go to the lost sheep, but to go to all nations. Jesus is calling the disciples, the apostles, and us to do impossible things. And he expects them to be done. For Jesus, he is not talking today in metaphors. He's not giving us a parable. He's not using hyperbole here. Jesus expects us to change the world. He expects us to change the world with the help of the Holy Spirit. As I see it, there are three great challenges facing our nation right now. And they are also facing most of the world as we speak. I'm told that the worldwide economy is in shambles. The state of race relations is at a breaking point. And we have the virus attacking most of the world. All three of these challenges affect each and every one of us. And God is calling us to do something. The big question is, what? Just what can we do? We're just, 50 people here in Lancaster. And through these videos, beyond Lancaster a little bit, but what can we as people of God do? I will be honest with you, I don't think any of us are going to go run right out and cast out demons or raise people from the dead or cure lepers. But there are things that we can do because Jesus' call is for us. His call is for us to do the impossible. Now, I'm not an economist, so I can't give us any clues on how to help the worldwide economy other than I hear buy local. So that's my one suggestion for the economy is buy local. When it comes to the other two great challenges facing us right now, there are things that I believe that God is directly calling us to do. But first, we need to have our own house in order. And when I talk about our own house, I mean our own spiritual lives. Our prayer life, our devotional life, our Bible reading life. The Apostle Paul in several places calls us to pray without ceasing. And I think right now that is what God is calling for each and every one of us to do, is to pray. To pray all day long, to have a conversation with God continually in our heads and in our hearts, so that God knows what is going on with us and hears even the smallest of our joys and of our needs. We need to do it, and the world needs our prayers as well. If you're wondering about Bible reading, if you're wondering about what to read next throughout this coronavirus time, I've given you many suggestions of what to read. Right now I'm suggesting that you read the Psalms. And it'll take a while, because I'm going to suggest that you just take one psalm a day. Start at number 1 and go through 151, I think there are. But take one. And the first time you read it at your regular pace. And the second time you read it very slowly, one word at a time, taking that word in. And then read it again. And read it as if you were the person who was writing it. You can tell when you read through one of the Psalms what kind of psalm it is. Is it a psalm of praising God? Is it a psalm where they're angry with God? Is it a psalm where they're asking for help? What is going on in the psalm, and what does it have to say to me today? So, we've talked about the economy, not very much. We've talked about the virus, haven't we? No, we've talked about our own self. Sorry about that, I got lost. Now, what about race relationships and the coronavirus? What do we do about these great challenges that are in front of us? I think the coronavirus is pretty easy. We got to leave the big things like vaccines to somebody else. But God calls us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that means with the virus that we continue to listen to the medical experts. And it means that we continue when we go out to wear a mask. And it means that when we go out, we limit how many people we come in contact with and how close we get to those people. And do you know why we do that? We do that not for our own protection, but for the love of our neighbor. I'm told that we wear a mask so that if we happen to sneeze, it doesn't get on somebody else. And we may think that we're healthy. But I'm told that there's a new term that I heard of being pre-symptomatic, meaning in the 3 days before you start to feel sick, you can be infectious. How would that work if we're not wearing masks and we're in that 3 days and we're giving people this virus? So remember that we do these things not for us, but for our neighbor. Now, what about race relations? I know I'm going several places today, but I think we need to. The race relation things aren't going away anytime soon. So what do we do? Where do we go? I know that most of us, maybe none of us, are going to go join a Black Lives Matter protest. But what can we do about race relations? What can we do to become anti-racist? I certainly don't have all the answers, but I do have some small but tough challenges for us today. As we get out of our houses more and more, let's look for people of different ethnic backgrounds than ourselves. And let's look them in the eye from 6 feet away. And let's nod or say hello. Simply treat everyone like a child of God who has the value of a child of God. The next step would be to start a small conversation. A small conversation about anything as you're standing in line at Costco. Then I think the next step, at least for me, is to ask somebody different than myself very bluntly, and I have to admit I haven't tried this yet, to ask them bluntly, you know what, in the short time that we have here in line together, what can the two of us do about race relations? I don't know if that's what God is calling you to do, but I can't wait for the answers the first few times I try it. Whatever it is that God is calling you to do, I'm sure that He is hoping that you will go boldly into the unknown. Just like the apostles were called to proclaim the good news, to do the impossible, to cure the sick, to raise the dead, to cleanse the lepers, and to cast out demons.